I've been tracking my finances now for the last decade as an accountant. My wife and I were able to pay down $43,000 worth of debt in just 13 months and build a $1 million net worth because of this consistency. And now I'm helping people with their own personal finances try to get their own wins. So what I've done is compiled the 10 budgeting mistakes that everyone's making and that I'm seeing as a reoccurring theme to hopefully save you some time. So if you feel lost with your finances, you're in the right place. And we'll just jump right into the first one, which is not including financial goals as a budget line item. You have financial goals, right? But you're probably not reaching them. Why? Because you're setting yourself up to fail. Here's what many people do with their finances every month. Let me know if this resonates. You pay off all your regular expenses for the month. Okay, that's great. But then at the end of the month, you look and you're like, oh, wow, I haven't applied any money to my financial goal, my debt, my whatever. And the goal keeps getting pushed off every single month. But this cycle keeps happening. Why? Because you haven't changed your habit, but you want a different outcome, a different result. So here's what I want you to do. Here's some tactics that you can do to change this habit. After I'm done here, pause the video, write down the things that are most important to you. There could be financial goals, life goals, whatever the thing is, whatever's most important to you. After you have that list, go back 3 months for your expenses and actually look at where your money's going. You're going to be able to see very quickly if your money is or is not aligned with those financial goals. And if this is your first time doing it, let me spare you the suspense here. It's not going to be aligned with your financial goals or your life goals, okay? And that's totally fine because we can still change the process. Like there's still time, we're still living, so we can change what we're doing with our money. It's not set in stone. So for example, if you're in a ton of debt and you wrote that down as one of your goals, like, oh, I want to pay off my debt, I want to be, debt free. My assumption is that you'd want to prioritize your money a little better to make this happen every month. And that way it's not a reactionary thing, but you're being proactive. Just to be honest with you, this will not be perfect. It's going to be frustrating the first month, 2 months, whatever. But then you get in a habit and you kind of get into a rhythm, which transitions perfectly to the next budgeting mistake you're probably making, which is not tracking all expenses. For some reason, you think keeping track of your finances in your head is working, but it's not. This is not some like wishy-washy thing. You're either tracking your finances, you're tracking your spending, or you're not. There's no gray area. Some people are only tracking the bills that they have to pay to other people, like utilities or their rent or their credit cards, but they're not considering the regular everyday expenses like groceries or Amazon. And quite honest, guys, like you're just not gonna win if you're half-assing it. And before I started budgeting it, I had the same questions in my mind. I was like, why do I still live paycheck to paycheck? Now I know why. It wasn't until I committed myself to being intentional with my money, not restrictive, right? Intentional. There's a big difference, right? I didn't restrict my life. I was just more intentional with how my money was being spent, aligning it towards the things that matter to me the most. And if you don't like your financial outcomes, you have to look at the inputs, okay? Are you spending enough time, money, effort into these things? Which brings me to the next budgeting mistake you're probably making, which is giving up too soon when the first budget fails. Personal finance is hard. There's no sugarcoating it. But if you've never gone down this personal finance journey before, then that means it's a new skill. And new skills, you don't just pick up right away. Did you fall a bunch the first few times you rode a bike as a kid? Did you instantly know how to swim? Were you an expert in your field on your first day of a new job? Of course not. But you stuck with those things out of, either a necessity like your job or a want like riding the bike. So if you keep falling off the wagon doing the personal finance thing, you need to find a way to make it either a necessity or, dare I say, make it fun. There's a few ways to do this. One way is to have an accountability partner. That way you aren't just letting yourself down if you don't do it, but the person that's, working with you and you guys made a bond over this, you're impacting them as well. So find a, significant other, a friend, a family member, whoever, someone that you can talk to about this, and maybe they're going through something similar and you guys can both help each other climb the mountain. Another way is to make a financial goal so good and so impactful that you have to reach it. For example, I have a goal in the next 5 years that I would love the opportunity to go to my wife and be like, you know what? I make enough money for all of us now. And if you don't want to work anymore and you want to do something else, you have that opportunity. So after writing it down, saying it out loud, and now, speaking it publicly in a video like this, like, how am I not going to try to achieve this goal? Like, it feels like it's everything now. The weight is on my shoulders. One, like it's obviously tied to me emotionally. Like, how cool would that be if I could provide that opportunity for her? Like, we have 2 kids. That would just be an incredible, incredible thing. And two, now you guys know about the goal. So I expect you to, keep me accountable, be my accountability partner and keep calling me out, making sure that I'm doing it, as much as I can to make this happen. Give yourself a goal that's too good to ignore. The next budgeting mistake you're probably making is forgetting irregular or seasonal expenses. I'm recording this video in the middle of December, and this is a very common month for people to let their finances slip, right? There's a lot of financial and social pressures that come along with the month of December. So this is me saying, I understand, but we can't just ignore a goal that we have, our finances for 1/12 of the year. We're never going to make any progress. So if you know that December is going to be, obviously a little more expensive, why don't we start planning for it in July? Imagine if you were able to put aside $100, $200 a month for 6 months for that moment in December when you can just move all that money over and, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, right? And by now we know the order of the months. Right? We know what's happening. We know the order, all 12 of them, so we can plan accordingly. I'm working with someone on her personal finances, and in the last meeting that we had, she was stressed because she had this 6-month payment that was due in the next month, and she didn't really have the money for it. It's for thousands of dollars, okay? And she's like, yeah, this always puts me in the hole like a couple months. Like I pay for it on a credit card, and then I have to pay off the credit card, and takes a couple months for me to pay it off, and then the next 6 months thing comes again, and the same thing happens. And I was like, well, why don't we put aside 1/6 of the 6-month payment every single month? And then that way, when the payment comes due every 6 months, we just, again, slide the money over to the correct account. We make the payment and then we move on. And it didn't impact our other financial goals, right? We just were planning and we were being more intentional. She's like, oh, that makes a ton of sense, right? So plan ahead. We want to keep moving forward, even if it's really small increments. We want to keep moving forward, not backwards. Which brings me to the next mistake you're probably making about budgeting, which is not communicating with a partner about financial goals. When my wife and I were paying down $43,000 worth of debt in 13 months, we had a literal debt meeting that lasted 5 or 10 minutes at the beginning of each month on our couch in our living room. We had to make sure that everything was aligned because I had debt that was just mine, she had debt that was just hers, and then we had shared debt. It was like a complete mess. We started the process having 2 different bank accounts, and then we transitioned to 1 bank account. And the goal of those meetings was to prioritize the certain debts, and we had to make sure we were communicating because, again, there was all these accounts and it was kind of confusing. So we didn't want like one person to use up all the money for their thing when it wasn't the priority, right? So we just wanted to talk it through. How much are we paying for each of the debts that month? And how do we keep being intentional with our spending? And I'm actually so confident in the process that I made a free course showing you how to find more money in your finances so that you could pay down your debt 2 times faster. How does that sound? It's completely free. So if that interests you, the site is school.com/debt. It's in the description of this video. And right now, if you join, I'm offering a free 30-minute strategy call and get you going, get you ramped up, and get a strategy for you to continue moving forward. Which brings me to the next budgeting mistake you're definitely making, using unrealistic spending limits. This can go either way, right? Too high spending limits or too low spending limits. But I want to talk to you about the low spending limits. And let me tell you what happens with most people. Let me know if this resonates. You get in like an emergency financial situation and you just start slashing your expenses, right? You do that for a couple months, but then it just goes back to normal. You're yo-yoing back and forth to slashing to not slashing to slashing. And it's just like this crazy process. There's no flow, there's no rhythm, there's no structure. Why? And it's just not sustainable. You're going to get burnt out from, having nothing in your life, and it's not going to work, and you're not going to stick with it. If I said I wanted to lose 20 pounds in a week and that I was only going to eat 500 calories a day, that would maybe work for a couple days, but that's just completely unsustainable. And I would absolutely burn out. I would have a cheat day and probably would be a health risk, but I'm not a doctor, so consult your nutritionist. But how can you find a sustainable financial solution? It all comes back to the financial goals, because it does us no good if we take 2 steps forward but then 3 back, and we keep doing this like seesaw thing. My 3-year-old loves a seesaw, but for you in our finances, like we can't be seesawing, okay? We need to be making slow progress forward, and then that slow progress turns to like a medium speed, and then we're sprinting, and then we're Usain Bolt. If you're in the crawling, walking stages, right? Create that goal to be your North Star, where all of your money-making decisions should go through that. If a decision you make will get to your goal faster, then do more of those things. If a decision that you make will not impact your financial goal or impact it negatively, then maybe we don't do that. Which brings me to the next budgeting mistake you're definitely making, which is ignoring small reoccurring charges. The world we live now is all about monthly, quarterly, annually subscriptions, right? And you probably have way more than you remember having. That's why if you've never created a budget before, I would recommend a process called the 3-month look back. We talked about this earlier, but yeah, we go back, we try to find all of our expenses. And honestly, the more data you have, probably better. So for extra credit, you could go back 6 months and it's going to help you out even more. The more data that you have around your spending habits, the more informed decisions you'll be able to make and the faster that you will likely reach a financial goal. Bringing us to the next budgeting mistake that you're probably definitely making, overestimating on how much self-control you have. I was working with someone, we were reviewing his budget, and I came across an expense category called retail therapy. And I honestly had no idea what that was. So I was like, hey, what is that? He basically summarized it as if he ever gets sad or anxious in his life, he gives himself permission to buy something that would cheer him up and make him happy. Now, I'm all for that, right? Doing things that make us happy, mental health. That's literally the reason why I work out every day. I'm not trying to be some muscle man or ripped or whatever. It's just like my happy place, and I get a sweat on. I have the best thoughts that I have. Like my mind is so clear, so I totally understand that. But creating a system where you give yourself permission, where every time you have an emotion, it triggers something, and in this case, it's a negative thing, you're just buying junk, it's a little dangerous. And I think this is why a lot of people are living paycheck to paycheck, are in crippling debt, because they don't have a system set up for their finances. They just go off of their emotions, their feelings, the which way the wind is blowing. And now he had hundreds of dollars a month in this category. So when he did the 3-month look back, it was like 300 something, 400 something, 200 something. It was all over the place. And when I asked him the kind of stuff that he bought, because again, it just said retail therapy, he thought for a second. He's like, I honestly don't remember. So to him, his goal was to feel happy, but what it was actually doing was just completely destroying his finances and honestly destroying his future just because he had no self-control in the moment. And when things felt hard or sad, he just pulled out his credit card, bought a thing off Amazon, and moved on with his day. So let's create an environment of how to reach our financial goals, a system. We want to set up a system, remove our emotions, right? Because we want facts, we want data, we don't want feelings. Which brings me to the next mistake you're definitely making with your budgeting, assuming that income is guaranteed instead of planning for variability. This is for all you out there with variable income. It can be a little more challenging to create a budget off of variable income, especially since, the budget is based off the income that we make, right? So all the money that we make during the month is what needs to be budgeted. So if we don't know what that number is, it makes it very challenging. So what you can actually do is a similar process to the 3-month look back that we just talked about for expenses, but do it for your income. And since there's way less transactions for your income than your expenses, I would recommend, again, getting more data. So maybe go back 6 months, 12 months, and that way you can get a great frame of, okay, this part of the year, I usually make this is the average. The summer, wow, that's great. I make a ton of money. The winter, no, right? You can get the seasonal shifts of what you do in each month, in each quarter, and figure it out from there. Because at the end of the day, we just want to find a reasonable average for our expected income that we can use for our budget, right? The closer that we can get, the better. And I just don't want someone with variable income to use the fact that they have variable income an excuse as why they're not tracking their expenses. Will your budget be more challenging than someone with a fixed income? Probably. But again, that's not a good enough excuse. If you don't like where you are, you have to get over the hurdle. And again, once you get over like a hurdle, okay, and then another one's coming up, they get easier and easier. The hurdles get smaller and smaller, and you're able to jump higher and higher. The number 10 budgeting mistake that you're making is failing to adjust for life changes. My wife and I, we have 2 kids. We have a 3-year-old and we have an 8-month-old. So our 3-year-old has been going to daycare for a while, okay? Our daycare costs $300 a week, so it's about $1,200 a month. And a few months ago, we started our 8-month-old in daycare, so all of a sudden, overnight, our daycare bill doubled from $300 a week to $600 a week and about $2,400 a month, which is absolutely insane, a huge portion of our income. If you're a parent, let's vent about it down in the comments, okay? Because it's crazy. But we knew that our 8-month-old, before she was born, around 5-6 months, we'd be sending her to daycare. So what did we do? We didn't wait until she was 4, 5, 6 months old and be like, crap, what are we doing with this daycare bill? We planned ahead because we knew that we needed to find or figure out $1,200 extra a month, which just sounds insane. But when you give yourself time to figure it out, you figure it out. And we would have failed if we just didn't think about it. We would have failed. We wouldn't have been prepared for it, because we want to be intentional with our money. That's just kind of like where my wife and I are at. Everything's about intentionality, not restrictive, but intentionality, because we are not going back into, credit card debt or whatever, personal debt, just because our kids are in daycare and we didn't plan for it. Like, that's ridiculous. If you liked this video, you're going to love the next video, which is the 7 money mindset shifts that help us pay off $43,000 of debt in 13 months. I will see you on the other side.